Greetings, everyone. Today I'm going to show you a looping structure called a while loop, like while you are waiting or while you are out. Now, a while loop, say that after a few martinis for dinner, is a looping structure that you use when you don't necessarily know how many times you want that code to be looped through. It's sort of like a for next statement, if you know what a for next statement is. A for next statement is used as a looping structure when you know how many times you want to loop through your code. For example, you may want to figure out your interest payments over 60 months of your car payment. So you would loop 60 times. Or you might want to figure out the interest paid per year for your mortgage. Mortgages are, presumably, 30 years. So your for next statement would loop to 30. So your for next statement is a looping structure that you used when you know, or more or less know, how many times you want to loop through your code. Now that's when a while statement that I'm going to show you now is a little bit different. It's kind of like a for next statement in the fact that it is a looping structure, but you use while when you're not really sure how many times you want your code to be looped through. Like, for example, you may want to loop until a certain condition is equal to true. Let's just say, for example, that you earned $55,000 a year, and every year you got a 3% raise. You may want to have a looping structure that computes your salary until you reach, let's say, $60,000. So you don't know exactly how many times you want to loop through your code. You just want to loop through the code until, while the salary is equal to or less than a certain amount. So while is used when you want to actually test for a condition to go through your code rather than how many times to go through your code. So let me just stop yapping about that and kind of show you what that kind of means. So I'm going to start with two examples. The first example is going to be a really simple while loop, and then we're going to get more complex from there. So I have my ubiquitous Hello World Java program here. So I'm going to put in a real simple program. I'm going to put in an integer. We'll put an int I. Pardon me, will equal 0. And we will say this. How about this? While I is less than 5, we will loop through the code. Whoops, hold on. Let me get rid of that. There you go. My keyboard's a little sticky. So notice my while statement looks like the following. It starts with the while command, and then it has a condition. So basically in English, this is saying while I is less than 5, execute this block of code. Now right now there's nothing in that block of code, but you can see that the while loop has a start brace and an end brace. So it is a while block, right? Just like we have our main block here, and then we have our class block. So the while statement is a block as well. So I'm going to clean my code up a little bit by getting rid of that space. And notice how we got it indented really nicely there. So I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say system out print line, and we're going to print out the value of I. So we'll say system out print line I, and then we have to iterate I. Iterate means we have to either increment it or decrement it or something. Because if we don't, we're going to have an infinite loop here. Let me ask you this for an imaginary extra credit bonus point. If I ran my program exactly the way it is now, I'm not going to because, bad things would happen. They really were. How many times will this while loop execute? Well, let's look at this. This while loop will execute while I is less than 5. Guess what? I will always be less than 5. So this is an infinite loop. This will loop forever and ever and ever and ever and ever until your system crashes or until the cows come home. That's how long this will loop for. So be careful when you put a while loop in that you don't create an infinite loop, because that's just possible here. So in this case, I'm just going to add one to I. That would be I plus plus. Remember, or maybe don't remember, I plus plus is just an operator or just a command that's equivalent to saying I equals I plus 1. What that means in English is take the value of I and add 1 to it. That's what I plus plus means. So the first time through, it's going to equal 0. Then I plus plus will make I equal to 1. Second time through, I plus plus will make I equal to 2, and so on and so forth. So now I'm reasonably sure I'm not going to have an infinite loop. So let me execute my program. And I get 1, 2, 3, 4. Now what if I want to start I equals 1? I can. I could say rather than 0 to 5, I can say from, I equals 1 and while I equals less than 6. So I execute, and then our while statement is going to execute 5 times. Now, this example that I showed you is very academic. It just showed you the bones or the nuts and bolts of a while statement. It's not doing anything useful. As you're looking at this here, it's not. All it's doing is it's executing the code 5 times. But it still illustrates the concept of a while statement. Let's do something slightly more useful. Let's just say that, how about, I'm making up as I go along. All right, it's summertime. And in summertime, we all like going to amusement parks. Well, at least I do, right? It's always nice you go to a carnival when the Knights of Columbus bring the traveling death show to a Walmart parking lot near you, right? But when you go to carnivals or you go to amusement parks, there is like that yardstick that shows like how big you need to be. And, hopefully we're all above 60 inches or so we could go on the big rides. But if you remember when you were a kid, you used to have to measure yourself. And if you weren't tall enough, you weren't able to go on that ride. And if you're like me, that kind of sucked when you were a kid. So how about this? Let's write a program that will compute in years how many years you have to wait until you're a certain height. And we're kind of making up the rules as we go here. Let's just say, for example, you're 40 inches tall. How big would that be? Let's see, what 40 inches, it'd be pretty short, right? Just work with me on this. I'm going to type in, how about this? I'm going to declare a float. So let me do this again. My keyboard's a little sticky. Let me declare a float. And we'll call this one my height. Or my h, my height. And we will say I am 40 inches tall. How about this? 40.5 inches tall. And again, what we're going to do here is we're going to figure out how many years it's going to be until I'm, 72 inches. Let's just say you got to be, well, that's pretty tall, but work with me on this. And we will say, how about this? While, and we'll put in, how about MH for my height is less than 72. 72 would be inches. We will print out my height. And we will add, how about this? Every year, again, I'm kind of making this up, but let's say every year we get 2 inches taller. So we could say my height is equal to my height plus 2.5. So I guess what we're saying here is if we start today, this year, year 0, or whatever it is, and I am 40.5 inches tall, while I'm less than 72 inches, and again, 72 is just 72, but it means inches, right? While my height is less than 72, print it out, and then add 2.5 inches. I probably should put enough here, right? Float. So the first time through, it's going to be 40.5. Then, you know what, just to make it interesting, let's just say we grow 2.53 inches per year. So then the next time through, it'll be 74.5 something, and then it'll add 2.53 every time it goes through. So this is a little bit more useful than the one I showed you. Actually, this is a pretty good example because it doesn't add a lot of complexity to the program. So you really get to see what the while does without adding a whole bunch of fluff in here. You know, it's a really simple algorithm. I start out at 40.5 inches tall. While I'm less than 72 inches, print out how many, you know, how many inches I am. Anyway, so let me execute. I'm pretty sure this is not going to be an infinite loop. And wait, we got ooh, look at this. We got our lossy error. So remember what we have to do here? If not, we have to put an F. So let me run this again. I think I might have to put one here too, but let's see. For line 7. But we'll see. Let the compiler catch it. There we go. So this just lists 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 years. Or 12 because we start at year number 0. So this while loop will execute line 8 and line 9 as long as this condition is true. So to make this like ultra fancy, what I can do is I can even like print the year if I wanted to. I could say int. And then how about my year equals 0. And I could say, how about this? I will say output line. I will say year add the year, which is my year. And then I'll just concatenate the height. There we go. And then also I'll add 1 to year too. I'll say, how about this? My year plus plus. Now remember, this is what we're doing. We're just printing out, the year. So rather than counting them, it's going to say year 1, year 2, year 3, or starting at year 0. But this looks really close to an iterator, doesn't it? My year, but it really isn't. My year is just a local variable. It has nothing to do with the while loop. The while loop will execute while my height is less than 72. My year is just a variable that I'm using, just to print out in the system.outprint line. Okay, so let me execute my program. And there we go. In year 0, which is like right now, I'm 40.5 inches. So I would have to wait 12 years, right, until I am, well, let's see, 12 years while I'm less than. So actually it would be, to be completely accurate, year 13, I would be above 72. So I would have to wait 12 years to get to 72 inches. And then presumably on year 13, I would be tall enough to go on that ride. So this is actually a fairly decent example. I started out kind of being funny with this, but the more I went through it, the more I'm kind of liking this as a really good, terse, succinct, what is that word, which means is small and useful, example of the while loop. Now, while loops are used all the time. Now, they're used for things such as amortizing interest rates, right? If you got a savings account that gets like every night, your bank runs a program that calculates interest in your checking account. Now, your interest for a day would be like 0.00000001, but there is a program that does that. So there's a while loop there that does that you presumably could look to see if you kept money in the bank at 0.00001 a day, you could figure out how many days it would take to double your money. I mean, it would be a large number for sure, but you could do that. While loops are useful for that. They're also useful for algorithms that you want to stop when your algorithm is solved. Now think about that. Now I'm getting all abstracty on you, right? Oh, I just said algorithm. Remember, algorithm is just a mathematical equation, either something that's descriptive, like right here, this is a descriptive algorithm, where we want to describe what my height looks like, and the algorithm is complete when my height is equal to or greater than 72. So a while loop is really good for testing my algorithm and looping through my algorithm until I don't want to test it anymore. So in English, that means that I don't want to test the value of my height, when it's equal to or above 72. So I could have a really complex algorithm here. Like, for example, how about this? How about I was looking at, this is a good one. It's warm outside, okay? And I just was outside and I'm getting bitten by mosquitoes. Okay, now when you're bitten by mosquitoes, you get, mosquitoes you can get like West Nile from mosquitoes. You can also get like malaria from mosquitoes. And we can do is we could put in numbers from the Center for Disease Control that looks at the number of people in a certain population and their probability of getting bit by a mosquito, and compare that to their probability of getting like West Nile disease or malaria. You could actually mathematically model that. Now, I'm not going to get into all the X's and O's of that, but you could probably imagine that you can put a math equation together that would say, okay, well, based on the number of mosquitoes outside, the population, the temperature, your probability of getting malaria is, point something percent. You would be able to take that algorithm and put it through a while loop and say, while the probability is less than 5, or while the probability is less than 3%, or something like that. You can actually use that while loop to test your algorithm. So this is a very simple while loop, but they can be very complex, and they're used everywhere. Now, I'm going to wrap this up here. This is an example of a Java while loop. Now, while loops exist in different sorts of flavors. Not here, but there's other flavors of whiles that you could run. There's a cousin of while called do while that acts just like a while, but you have a little bit more control over how many times your while loop executes. Like, for example, if you want it only to execute once, you can look that up. As far as the while loop goes, there's some other flavors, other things that you can do with iterators in your while loop to make it behave like slightly different. Now, in the spirit of things and the way I teach is I use the grocery store approach. I don't show you every item in the store. I show you where you can find certain items. So keep that in mind, that there are different flavors of the while loop, and I encourage you to look them up because you know enough now to learn this on your own. You really do. The rest of it is just kind of plugging in the pieces. Now, while loops also exist in almost every other language. So I know you're learning here, or you should be learning. That's why you're watching this, and you're saying, well, yeah, I'm going to be doing Python or Perl or Ruby or all these other great languages, and okay, great. Or Swift if you're doing Apple development. Okay, while loops exist in any language. In the 1950s, your grandfather, or maybe your great-grandfather or mother, they were writing software in COBOL in 1959, used while loops. I mean, this is a construct of programming that technology doesn't change. This is really a fundamental. It's an ABC. It's a building block of good structured code. So anyway, that's all I had for you. So hopefully you learned a little bit about while loops a little bit about algorithms and how while is used to test algorithms. And this is a simple algorithm that you're looking at, but they can be complex. It doesn't take much of a thinking cap to think about. This can be harder than it is. While loops are used as a programming construct, as a fundamental in just about every programming language. There are different syntaxes of while loops. Google is your friend. Look them up. Thank you for staying awake, and thank you for watching if you made it this far. And I bid you all a very well rest of the day. Thank you.